You probably never thought about this. What happens when the man who controls markets, silences boardrooms, and holds the world in his hands finds himself completely powerless in front of one smile, one glance, and a heart that doesn't even know he exists? Don't scroll away, because the story you're about to hear might just change the way you see love forever. I built an empire worth billions, but she didn't even know I existed. Every morning she served coffee at that small diner, her smile lighting up the room while my face was plastered across Fortune magazine. I sat in the corner booth, just another nameless customer in her world. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man who could buy entire city blocks couldn't purchase what he wanted most, her attention. You see, my world was built on calculations and strategic moves. By 35, I had transformed a small tech startup into a global corporation. My name, Eli Thompson, became synonymous with success. Business networks dissected my every decision, Forbes celebrated my innovations, and Wall Street hung on my every word. I had the kind of power that made rooms fall silent when I walked in. Everyone wanted something from me, a partnership, an investment, a moment of my time. But there I was, every morning at 7:15, sliding into that worn leather booth at Nora's Diner in Brooklyn, the smell of coffee and fresh pancakes filling the air, the gentle clinking of plates, and her voice, Lena's voice, calling out orders with a warmth that made even the grumpiest customers smile. Her dark skin glowed under the diner's fluorescent lights, and her braids were always neatly tied back, dancing slightly as she moved between tables. She never knew that the quiet man in the corner, always in a simple black sweater and jeans, could have bought the entire block with what he made in a day. To her, I was just another face in the morning rush, another coffee cup to refill, another have a nice day to wish. While my boardroom presence could make CEOs nervous, here I was, just ordinary. And strangely, that's exactly what I needed. You might wonder why someone like me would spend his mornings in a small diner watching a waitress who didn't know my name. The truth is, in a world where everything had a price tag and where every interaction came with expectations, Lena's genuine smile and complete indifference to my status became my anchor to reality. She treated everyone the same, the suited businesswoman, the construction worker, and the billionaire who she didn't recognize all got the same authentic warmth. This isn't your typical love story. It's not about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It's about finding value in being unseen, about learning that sometimes the greatest gift isn't in getting what you want, but in discovering what you need. And Lena, without ever knowing it, was about to teach one of the world's most powerful men the most valuable lesson of his life. 5 months ago, I discovered Nora's Diner by accident. My driver had taken a different route to avoid traffic, and there it was, a small corner establishment with foggy windows and a flickering neon sign. Something about its simplicity called to me. Maybe I was tired of the sterile business lounges and overpriced restaurants where everyone knew my name. Maybe I just wanted real coffee for once. The bell chimed as I pushed open the door, and that's when I first saw her. Lena wasn't just serving coffee. She was orchestrating a symphony of morning rituals. "Your usual, Mr. Ellis," she called out to an elderly man while simultaneously sliding a plate of eggs to a young student. Her movements were graceful, purposeful, and somehow both efficient and unhurried. When our eyes met, there was no recognition, no shift in her expression, just a genuine smile and a warm, "Take any seat you'd like, honey." In that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, someone looked at me without an agenda, without knowing or caring about my net worth or my company stock price. I chose the corner booth partly out of habit. I'd spent years choosing positions where I could see everything, control everything. But Lena approached with such ease, holding her coffee pot like a wand that made mornings bearable for everyone around her. "New to the neighborhood?" she asked, filling my cup. Her voice had a musical quality to it, like warm honey over rough grains. "Just passing through," I lied, something I rarely did in business but found myself doing instinctively here. I wanted to preserve this moment, this feeling of being nobody special. She recommended the blueberry pancakes with a wink, saying they could turn any morning around. I ordered them, even though I hadn't eaten pancakes since college. That morning, I watched her interact with every customer. She knew most of their names, their stories, their troubles. To one, she offered relationship advice. To another, she lent a sympathetic ear about a sick parent. She carried their burdens as easily as she carried plates of eggs and toast. Her laughter, when it came, was genuine and infectious, making the whole diner feel warmer. Before I left, she refilled my coffee one last time. "Hope to see you again," she said, not because I was important, but because that's who she was, someone who genuinely hoped everyone's day would be better for having stopped by. I left a generous tip, but not too generous, nothing that would make her remember me differently. That evening, sitting in my penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, surrounded by reports and projections, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she made everyone feel seen, heard, and cared for without even trying. In my world of calculated moves and strategic relationships, her authentic kindness felt like finding an oasis in a desert. I canceled my usual breakfast meeting for the next morning, and the next, and every morning after that. Sometimes the most significant decisions in life are made in the quietest moments over a cup of diner coffee and blueberry pancakes that actually did turn every morning around. It's funny how success works. While my company was reaching new heights, breaking into international markets and disrupting industries, I found myself more invested in the morning rush at Nora's Diner. Every acquisition announcement, every stock surge, every major deal, they all became markers of time between my morning visits to see Lena. In my boardroom, I was orchestrating billion-dollar deals. "Mr. Thompson, the Singapore merger needs your attention," my assistant would say. "The board is waiting for your decision on the European expansion." I'd make these massive decisions that affected thousands of lives, all while thinking about how Lena had remembered that elderly Mr. Ellis preferred his toast slightly burnt, or how she kept extra sugar packets for the college student who practically lived on coffee during finals week. My wealth grew exponentially that year. Headlines read, "Tech Titan Thompson's empire reaches $50 billion valuation." But my measure of wealth had shifted. I started scheduling my most important meetings for 9 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. My executives were puzzled. I'd always been an early morning person. They didn't know that my real morning meetings were with a chipped coffee cup and the hope of a few words with Lena. She still didn't know who I was, and that became my anchor. While CNBC analyzed my business strategies and Forbes speculated about my next move, Lena would casually ask if I wanted my eggs over easy, like usual. She'd share little stories about her day, her dreams of opening her own restaurant someday, her pride in her younger sister who was in medical school. Each detail she shared felt more valuable than any market insight I'd ever received. I found myself making business decisions differently, too. When we acquired a chain of local businesses, I made sure none of the small diners would be affected during a major urban development project. I secretly added clauses protecting small business owners. My board thought I was being strategically conscious of community relations. In reality, I was protecting places like Nora's Diner, places where genuine human connection still existed. The irony wasn't lost on me, how I could influence global markets with a single decision, yet I couldn't bring myself to simply tell Lena who I was. Every morning, I'd arrive in my carefully chosen casual clothes, driven in a deliberately ordinary car. Sitting in my usual corner booth, my security team thought I was crazy for reducing our usual protocols for a diner visit. But they didn't understand that this simplicity had become my most precious luxury. Sometimes, during crucial video calls, I'd find myself distracted by the memory of her laugh or the way she'd absent-mindedly tuck loose braids behind her ear while taking orders. My CFO would be presenting quarterly projections, and I'd be thinking about how Lena had mentioned wanting to take culinary classes but couldn't afford them. I could have paid for her entire education with what I spent on lunch that day, but that would have shattered the beautiful, ordinary world we shared. In 12 months, my empire had doubled in size, but the real growth wasn't in my portfolio. It was in the quiet moments at Nora's Diner, learning that true wealth isn't always counted in dollars and cents. Sometimes, it's measured in authentic smiles, in remembering how someone takes their coffee, in being seen, not for what you own, but simply for who you are. You'd think that someone who successfully negotiated multi-billion-dollar deals could manage a simple conversation beyond coffee orders and weather comments. But every time I tried to engage Lena in a deeper conversation, my usual confidence evaporated. I, who could command rooms full of powerful executives, found myself stumbling over words like a teenager. There was the time I deliberately left my laptop open to a news article about my company, hoping she might notice. Lena simply closed it with a gentle smile, saying, "Take a break from work, honey. Breakfast is for nourishing your soul." The irony of her caring for my well-being while remaining completely unaware of who I was both warmed and hurt my heart. I tried leaving her hints. Once, I used my corporate card to pay, forgetting it had my full name and company logo. She simply swiped it without a glance, her mind already on the fresh pot of coffee she needed to brew. Another time, I purposely took a business call at my booth, throwing around terms like billion-dollar acquisition and market dominance. She just turned down the volume of the nearby radio, assuming it was bothering my call. The most memorable failed attempt was when I orchestrated a chance meeting outside the diner. I waited until her shift ended and made sure to accidentally bump into her at the bus stop. I had rehearsed the perfect conversation starter, but when she looked up and gave me that same warm smile she gave everyone, all that came out was, "The pancakes were really good today." She laughed, thanked me, and went back to reading her book, Eli Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. My security team watched these attempts with a mixture of amusement and concern. "Sir," my head of security once said, "we could arrange a proper introduction." But that wasn't the point. I didn't want to be introduced as the billionaire tech mogul. I wanted her to see me, really see me, just as I saw her. Each morning, I'd catch glimpses of her life through our brief interactions. How she'd come in some mornings with tired eyes but never a tired smile. How she'd slip extra bacon to the construction workers during cold months. How she kept a jar of lollipops for kids who behaved during breakfast. Every detail made me fall deeper, even as I remained just another regular in her world. The hardest part wasn't the failed attempts at connection. It was watching other men try to win her attention. Business types would come in, obviously recognizing her beauty, trying to impress her with their suits and status. She'd handle them with graceful professionalism, never leading them on but never being unkind. I'd sit there, gripping my coffee cup a little tighter, knowing I had more to offer than all of them combined, yet feeling completely powerless. In my other life, problems could be solved with money, influence, or strategic planning, but here in this small diner, none of that mattered. Each failed attempt at meaningful connection taught me something about myself, how much I'd come to rely on my status, how uncomfortable I was with genuine vulnerability, and how real connection couldn't be bought, strategized, or forced. Sometimes, I'd catch her humming while refilling my coffee, and for a moment, I'd want to tell her everything. But then she'd move on to the next table, treating everyone with that same genuine warmth, and I'd realize that perhaps being just another recipient of her everyday kindness was worth more than any grand revelation could offer. They say you never really know someone until you see them in a crisis. For Lena, that moment came on a rainy Tuesday morning when Nora, the diner's owner, suffered a heart attack. I walked in that morning to find Lena trying to hold everything together, her usual smile strained but present as she explained to customers that they might be short-staffed for a while. I overheard her on the phone during a quiet moment, talking about medical bills and insurance complications. Nora had been like a mother to her, giving her first job when no one else would. The diner wasn't just her workplace, it was her home. And now both Nora's health and the diner's future hung by a thread. That evening, in my office, I made some calls, not as the regular customer, but as Eli Thompson, the businessman who could move mountains with a phone call. Within hours, Nora had been transferred to the best cardiac unit in New York, with all expenses taken care of through an anonymous community health program. The diner's outstanding loans mysteriously disappeared, marked as paid in full by a shell company that couldn't be traced back to me. But what happened next showed me who Lena truly was. Instead of accepting this stroke of luck with relief, she worked even harder. She started coming in 2 hours earlier to handle paperwork, train new staff, manage supplies, and still somehow remembered every regular's order. She didn't know she was fighting to save something that was already secured. She just fought because that's who she was. I watched her run the diner with the same passion and precision that I ran my empire. She implemented a new inventory system, reorganized the kitchen for efficiency, and even started a small social media presence for the diner, all while visiting Nora in the hospital every evening after her shift. Her resilience was breathtaking. One morning, exhausted from another late night at the hospital, she almost dropped a pot of coffee. I caught it reflexively, burning my hand in the process. As she frantically apologized and treated my burn with the first aid kit, I saw tears in her eyes, not from guilt over my burn, but from the weight of everything she was carrying. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this going," she whispered, more to herself than to me, "but I have to for Nora." It took everything in me not to tell her that she didn't have to worry, that everything was taken care of. Instead, I just listened, offering the same kind of simple presence she'd always given to others. That moment changed something between us, not dramatically. I was still just a regular customer. But she started taking her breaks at my table, sometimes sharing her worries and hopes. She never complained, even when I knew she was exhausted. She'd just sip her coffee, gather her strength, and get back to work with that unwavering smile. Nora recovered slowly, and the diner not only survived but thrived under Lena's management. She never knew that her mysterious streak of good luck was orchestrated from the corner booth. What mattered was that through it all, she showed me what real strength looked like, not the power to make problems disappear with money, but the courage to face them head-on, armed with nothing but determination and a heart full of love. All great business ventures have an exit strategy, but how do you plan an exit from a love that never truly began? As Nora recovered and returned to the diner part-time, I found myself at a crossroads. The secret I'd carried for so long weighed heavier with each passing day, especially now that Lena occasionally shared her own secrets with me over coffee. One morning, she excitedly told me about being accepted into a culinary program, the same one I'd anonymously funded through a community scholarship initiative. Her eyes sparkled as she described her dreams of fusion cuisine, combining her grandmother's soul food recipes with modern techniques. I smiled, knowing that the commercial kitchen space she'd been offered to practice and was actually owned by one of my subsidiaries. That's when I realized something profound. All this time, I thought I was the wealthy one, the powerful one, the one with everything to offer. But Lena had given me something priceless without even knowing it. She'd show me what it meant to touch lives without power or pretense. Every life she'd changed, every smile she'd brightened, every burden she'd lightened, it was all real, genuine, and done without any expectation of return. I made my decision that afternoon. I wrote her a letter, not revealing my identity, but expressing everything she had taught me, how her kindness had changed my perspective on success, how watching her handle the diner's crisis had taught me more about leadership than any business school, how her genuine care for others had made me a better person and, surprisingly, a better business leader. I left the letter in an envelope marked Lena on my usual table, along with a tip that was generous but not suspicious. It was my last visit to Nora's diner, not because I'd given up on love, but because I'd found something more valuable, the understanding that true wealth isn't in what we possess or control, but in how we touch others' lives. Lena would go on to succeed in her culinary program, and the diner would thrive, protected by various community development programs I'd quietly put in place. She'd never know that the quiet man in the corner booth had ensured her dreams had a safety net, and that was exactly as it should be. Sometimes, I drive past the diner late at night after the lights are off. I think about how my empire grew even larger during my time there, not despite my morning disappearances but perhaps because of them. Lena taught me that true power isn't in being known, but in knowing when to remain unknown. That real impact doesn't always need recognition. In the end, this isn't a story about unrequited love. It's a story about learning that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is to let them shine on their own terms, to protect their dreams without claiming them, to love without needing to be loved in return. Lena never noticed the billionaire who loved her, and that became the most beautiful part of the story. Here I am now, sitting in my penthouse office, looking out over the city lights of Manhattan. The business magazines still speculate about the secret to my success, about how the past year has been my company's most innovative and humanitarian yet. They credit my new community investment initiatives, the small business protection programs, the educational scholarships. If they only knew it all began with a cup of coffee and a smile that asked for nothing in return. Sometimes, my executives ask me why I insist on visiting small diners and local shops before approving any new development projects. They don't understand that I'm looking for something that can't be quantified in market research, the kind of genuine human connection that Lena taught me to value. In every city, in every neighborhood, there are people like her quietly changing lives without any recognition. You might think this is a sad story about love that never had its moment, but I see it differently. Some people come into our lives not to be loved by us, but to teach us how to love. Lena never knew she had a billionaire's heart, but she had something far more valuable, the power to change lives simply by being herself. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't in our bank accounts, but in the lessons we learn from those who never knew they were teaching us. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear that love doesn't always need recognition to be real. And if you're ever in that part of Brooklyn, stop by Nora's Diner. Order the blueberry pancakes. Let Lena fill your coffee cup and brighten your morning. But do me a favor, don't tell her about me. Let her keep changing the world one coffee refill at a time, never knowing that she changed mine completely. Because in the end, I learned that true love isn't about possession or recognition. Sometimes, it's about protecting someone's light from afar, about letting them shine without casting your shadow. And in that kind of love, I found a wealth that no amount of money could ever match.